Okay, my friends, prepare to be astounded. They are going back to the permafrost. What does permafrost mean? It means something that's permanently frozen. Permafrost. Well, why is this a big deal? Well, when you freeze things, they don't degrade. And they went up into the permafrost. They're finding animals completely, totally preserved, tons of liquid blood in them, and they think this is a real big deal, which it is. But I don't think they're opening their eyes big enough to see the creatures that were really here and that are preserved in spectacular, exceptional preservation. These are fine, but I have ones that are stone now that were animals at one time and are totally stone, and they are still loaded with blood. Let me show you this short clip. This is from a different channel, and I'll show you the channel's name and all that stuff. And I'm not trying to steal any of their work. I'm just trying to show what reality is, and they are able to present their work. I'm not able to present my work. It's just not accepted anywhere, and I'm pretty much shut down. So all I can do is respond to the claims of others and hope some point in time people will start to listen. So that's what I'm going to do. Here it goes. Okay, before we go too deep into this, I want you to know everything I have I consider to be totally validated, and if somebody questions that, they can retest it. These 3 samples I had DNA tested, and I extracted the raw, literally raw blood, but it was mostly dried out. And I'm going to show you all about blood. You have to understand everything before you understand anything, because they loaded blood, you just scraped it off the surface. No, I drilled inside of it, and then I sent it off. Now, here's what it came back, all 3 samples, and one of them was a 36-inch fingertip, 3 feet long fingertip, which I will show you, and the lung, which is this lung right here, and I extracted the DNA from down in here. And all you got, I'll show you, I'll extract some more today. You can take as much as you want. And then I had the long here. I had the big 3-foot long, and I had a mud tip, which is just a fingertip. I'll show you the CAT scans from that. And all 3 of those came back as human DNA. And this was not a simple test. It wasn't cheap. It took 3 months. Excellent quality DNA sequences obtained from the 36-inch tip and a lung sample using these different primers. And here's what the mitochondrial cytochrome B gene, Homo sapien mitochondrial D loop region. And this was all the CTAGs. This was no simple little puppy test. This was no swab and say, oh yeah, that's human. No, absolutely not. This was as deep as you get into it. Now, so that's my evidence. And then I'll show you the CAT scans. And again, the stuff is here. So if anybody wants to contest my results, you're perfectly welcome to retest. Now, all my samples are rock. They're not still have flesh like the ones they're finding that were frozen in the permafrost. It must have still been very, very cold up there when this catastrophe happened, which was the worldwide flood. And at that point, they just started to freeze, and they're preserved amazingly, which I'll show you. We're going to go through a couple little clips of their video. I have blood coming out of all my stuff. Look at this. A friend of mine found this. This is a heart. There's the blood coming out. It was just raw blood, still inside of a rock. And these are the valves of the heart. And shortly after it started to dry out, you can see here. You see this? These are the different valves of the heart. And that right there is the vein blood, or either that or the lymph, which is not red blood. Your heart does 2 things. It pumps the black blood, which is the vein blood, and it pumps the red blood, which is the arterial blood. And here's what it looks like. This, I'm sure, is that yellow-looking spot. And these are the other vein heart valves. You see it? You see it right there. That's the big one right here. Hold on, I could turn it around and you can see it. All right, now it's going to be the same orientation as the other one. You see it? There's the yellow one there, and then you got the 3 big ones here, the big ones over here. Same thing. It's a heart. There's no other way to put it. And I know these things extremely well. And I have hearts here, but people all over the world are sending me this stuff. It's just amazing. And people just never knew it. They just never realized these stones contain blood. Look at this. This is a bone. All right? Now, out of one of these cavities, I can't even remember where, you have to have blood flowing. They call it a bone foramen. And out of there's two little blood vessels, a vein and artery. And when it comes out of the ground, they're still a little moist, and there's still blood, literally liquid blood inside of them. It comes out and makes a scab. You see that? That's a regular scab, just like you get on your own skin. Now, underneath of it is what they call a fibrin, the clotting factor. All right, and here it is. Where are you? Here you are. I just moved it out of the way. That's the same stuff you have underneath of your scabs when you get a little cut. Now, you see this right here, that little black spot? And this little red spot here, the red and the black? That's because of a vein and artery. Black is the vein, artery is the red. So I decided, well, I'll get all this stuff out of the way and see what we got then. You just keep going deeper and deeper. And here's the way it ended up. All right, there's the black spot. You see, you got to have a vein, and you got to have an artery. Everything has got to go. Blood goes out through the artery, it comes back through the vein. We're going to get into this pretty deep. So it was in something here. Now, I've been told by everybody, oh, that's just a rock. I said, no, this is a bone. And they said, no, it's not, because there's no bone. I said, yeah, actually there is bone. You know what? It's right there. That's the last bone that is in this bone. It's still bone, and I can show you in a microscope. They transition. Rarely do they leave anything that's still bone, because bone is very invadable in these particular conditions. But it invaded, and not to that last spot. And again, I got the microscope fired up. We're going to be looking at a bunch of stuff, and it's all. These rocks I'm showing you, these were body parts. And you want to see, they talk about seeing raw blood inside these creatures. Look at this. This right here is a lung. All right, these little holes here are like another, these are your, what they call the alveoli. And air comes through and it goes through all these little holes and it sucks up the oxygen and sends it through your body because the blood is passing around it. So it's saturated with blood. Your lungs are bags of blood that surround little balls of air. And the balls of air suck out the oxygen. And that's what these balls do. And they are all over here. You can see them, right? You see all these little holes, little balls looking things? That's the same as this. Now guess what? Out of these holes, blood came. You see these little red spots? They're not just little red spots. The blood bubbled out of there. And that's what the bubbling blood would look like. All right, so even when it turned to literally quartz, and it was at one time a lung, it was just a sack of blood. And it turned to quartz, but it still has the red blood in it. Now I'm going to take this lung here, and we're going to look at it in a microscope. And blood, all you do is rehydrate it from the rocks. What does rehydration mean? You put the water back in. The metals and all of the blood components, they don't go away. They just dry out. So when you drill into them, now you got to drill deep. When I say deep, you got to take out, eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch, whatever, and then you go in below that and you scrape out the blood out of an artery. Now, in the case of a lung, this flap at the bottom, you see how bloody that is? All right, now I drilled a hole right, I think maybe there, somewhere in here. This goes back 10 years ago. Well, not quite. But anyway, what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to rehydrate some of this blood. It's still here. It's still here. Blood is just tenuous as hell. It just never goes away. It's incredible. Okay, like I said, we're going to get into some really deep stuff today. I'm going to show you how to extract blood. I'm going to show you what the tissue looks on giant creatures. I mean giant. Like I told you, I have a 3-foot long fingertip, and this is it right here. All right, now I have a piece I broke off of here so I can get down inside to get the blood, because you can't get blood from the thick skin. And so I do have a piece of this skin, and fortunately it broke the skin off, the layer of the skin, and a little piece of the flesh came with it. So we'll be able to look at that in a microscope, the division between the skin, which is very thick, and then the actual flesh. And I want to make a point. My stuff is stone. You can work with stone because it just doesn't move around. When I show you what they're looking at in these tissues from these frozen animals, it's just like looking at a modern animal. You're never going to see the details that I can see. You would never see the interstitium. You're never going to see any of the details that I can produce. Now, this is the fingernail right here. You see that? That's the fingernail. And when I broke it off right here, the skin comes right up to the fingernail. It was right here. And it has the fingerprints on it. All right, and again, we're going to look at this in some extreme detail, so get ready. But here's what the fingerprints look like. I got it around here somewhere. I thought I did. Yeah, here it is. And this is what we're going to look at in a microscope on the inside of this, because here's what happens. This is the skin. Very tough, keratin, collagens, rubbery, thick, dense, and it has sweat pores, all right, which are these. You see the sweat pores? And this is nothing more than the skin. It came off just like that. But fortunately, a little piece of flesh came up with the skin. So most of it's just the skin. But there's a couple little spots, or at least one, very clear, that we'll look at, which has the skin and the flesh attached to it. So very, very cool to look at this stuff. If you really pay attention, it's just beyond your wildest imagination. That's all I can say. So I don't discount anyone for saying, "Oh, this guy's got to be crazy." Well, that's fine. I would have said the same thing. But if once you examine the evidence, and I show you, and I got DNA tests, I'm going to show you the cat skins, I'm going to show you everything. But first of all, let's see what they found in these frozen areas where they're really excited because of these animals. What happens now is the permafrost is drying, is melting, and all these animals are showing up in the permafrost, and they're freaking out, and they are in different levels of decomposition depending on how far back in the frozen time they are, because some places were frozen just like that, and they're virtually nothing is different. Some of them were frozen after, because the Earth was extremely heated up when it almost got hit by Venus. That's what caused all of this catastrophe. Velikovsky recorded it and documented this all, because every recorded civilization had the same story. We were almost hit by a fiery comet, and it turned out later to be Venus. And it actually collided with Mars and destroyed Mars. And there's this huge Mars Valerianus or something like that, this huge crater. It goes all the way across Mars. It's as wide as the United States, or wider, I think, and very deep. And it's where Venus smashed into it and wiped out everything on Venus, on Mars, which absolutely, 100%, was saturated with life just like Earth. And I can see all the stuff too from there, from the Curiosity mission from 2014. So, but you have to open up your eyes wide enough, and you have to get away from this dogma of don't believe any of this stuff. It's religious mumbo jumbo. It's all mythology. Well, yes, it's mythology, and it might be something to some people extremely religious. It might be to other people just one of those things that happen in history. But if you don't look into it, then you're just being perfectly happy deluded. Because once you don't look at this, you're living in delusion. And like they say, ignorance is bliss, and that means you're perfectly happy deluded. And that's what I found. And the most ones that are perfectly happy deluded are the most educated, and most of them have PhDs symbolizing their perfectly happy delusions. So until you start looking, you're just wasting your time talking about geology. So let's get back to reality. All right, look at this now. This is from a place called Extinct Zoo, and they're going to be doing this research on these permafrost creatures. Now, I am subscribing to their channel. Somebody sent me this and says, take a look at this, and sure enough, this is pretty good. So I am subscribing, and do the same thing to my channel, but then you got to click over here and hit all, this little ring the bell. And it says, yes, you'll get all notifications. Now, people are telling me they're not getting any of my notifications, or a lot of people are telling me that, so I don't know if they have the bell rung or not. But anyway, here we are at Extinct Zoo, and these are 7 craziest permafrost discoveries from Russia and Alaska. Now, it's cold up there, and everything's pretty well frozen, and it stays permafrost, permanently frozen. Now, as these things are thawing out, you can see this isn't frozen, and they're digging these things out, but they're still wet, fleshy bodies. So I'm going to get into their stuff, but don't forget, it's Extinct Zoo, and like I said, it's 13 minutes long. I'm just going to show you a couple clips. They're talking about right here a 42,000-year-old horse. They found a horse there. Now, where they come up with these dates, je ne sais pas, I do not know. But I can tell you one thing for a fact, possibly, for a sort of fact. All of my stuff, well, my stuff I know for no question whatsoever in my mind, this was all from the Great Flood. It's all on the surface of the earth. It only happened 3,500 years ago, according to Velikovsky, who did all the research, wrote the book Worlds in Collision, and I also wrote a book about him and about my experiences with academia, and I called it Mudfossils and Velikovsky and Minds in Collision. The minds of they couldn't deal with the truth, and he absolutely destroyed everything I did. And it was being looked at very carefully for a couple of weeks, and then it was so much pushback at it, it just was unbelievable. So, and anyway, that's my experience with trying to deal with it. Look at this. Where do you see this? This is this channel here. All right. I was just looking at this, and I thought, this is very interesting. They've got 64,500 subscribers. Okay, 64,000. 3 weeks ago, they put this up. They've got 708,000 views because this is something spectacular. Well, guess what? My channel is 190,000 subscribers, and I never get more than 4,000 or 5,000 hits on anything. Doesn't matter what I put up. And I'm putting up stuff like this a couple of times a day. I never get over 5,000 hits. That never goes over that. So my channel is basically destroyed. I don't know why. Because I'm sure, I guess I'm showing too spectacular of stuff, and I've been so suppressed by academia. They put me on all of these academic, lists of, the guy's insane. This is the first thing that happened to me. I was put on an academic spam list, and that was by a professor that was supposed to be looking into this head right here. Look. All right, where is it? Well, it's this head in my book. This is a book I wrote, Mudfossils, Velikovsky, and Minds in Collision. And it's this head right here. I have a better shot of it. But this was a living head at one time. Hold on, let me just show you. Okay, this is a story all onto its own. This head here was found by Arlie Caudle in a rural area of Kentucky somewhere, I don't know exactly where, in a muddy riverbank. After it was eroded in, this head popped out. Now, Jim Burchell, Arlie, I don't think got involved in presenting it. He sort of stayed behind the scenes. I never talked to Arlie, but I dealt with Jim Burchell, who presented this head on TV. I think it was the History Channel. Scott Walter, who is supposed to be one of these, geologist guys that really knows this stuff. And he's always talking about all these formations, which nobody can explain. And he's coming up with all these concocted stories that were just silly, really. But I wasn't going after him for that. I saw the TV show where he was on, and it was I think it was less than 1 minute, when presented with this on the History Channel. He said, oh, no question whatsoever, it's just a carved sandstone head, absolutely 100% certainty. This is just ferrous oxides means nothing. They're all over the place, the ferrous oxides, because they're blood. The red is the vein, the artery blood. The black is the vein blood. And the black coming out of bone is called bone black. And I have another one I can show you to prove the bone black. But here's the deal. Look at his nose. Let me come in on this close so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It's all splayed apart. Who's going to carve that? And who's going to carve the cartilage lines and everything in there? And who's going to infuse it with these iron oxides? You see, there's blood right here too. There's blood here where he smashed it open. There's blood in it. It looks like he got hit with a big round thing in his forehead. You see it? I don't know if that was what happened or not. Now this is a cap that's on his head. Jim said you could. I never touched this. Jim said you could slide a playing card up underneath the side. All right, and I looked at this carefully. I've had some better shots of this, but I looked at that really careful, and you can see the weave of the cap when you look at it good in the right light and so forth. So that was a cap on his head, but somebody killed him. It looked to me like he's been killed by something, or he just fell down and smashed on his face, and I don't know. I don't know what caused that trauma, but it looks to me like a round war club or something. They had war clubs. They were big round things, and I guess they were devastating when you got hit with one. And if that was it, I guess he's pretty well devastated. I don't know, but don't forget, these are the colors of the blood: the black and the red. I just showed you in the bone. The same stuff. Blood is blood. Now that's what we're going to talk about, is what's left over when it dries out. Well, I can tell you exactly what's left over. All of the minerals and metals and all of that stuff is still there. All you got to do is put water back in. You know how much water is in your blood? How much do you think? Stop and think about it for a second. How much water is in your blood? Tick, 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 tick. You're not going to believe what blood's made out of. I could show you, and I'm going to tell you some other stuff where they just came back from asteroid Bennu with a sample right out of a vein, out of a heart valve. It's a heart. What they have is blood. So all they have is the same stuff that's in your blood with all the water going off, basically. Evaporation happens to stuff, and then it just dries out. But the particles, the minerals and the metals and everything else, they don't evaporate. They just condense down into particulates. And that's what I drill out of my mud fossils. And I'm going to show you again. We're going to go into the microscope. I'm going to show you my huge one. This is going to be fun, because it's going to be fun for me too. I haven't done this in years and years. It's probably been 8 years since I really went deep into this as I did in the original. So this is going to be fun for me, as it might be for you. Now, we actually had this CAT scan, and this is what it really upset me. Well, Scott Walter wouldn't talk to me. I called him. I talked to him a couple times, and he said, "No, it's just carved. You don't know what you're doing. I'm a geologist. I know what I'm doing." I said, "Scott, let's talk about this." No, you're an idiot, and that's it. It was all over. So I got really upset. I kept telling Jim. I said, "Jim, this is real. This is no question whatsoever. Let's get it CAT scan. We'll do whatever we can do." I had my stuff all DNA tested and everything, so I knew what it was. But when we had a CAT scan, I did it. I tried to present this to Yale University. They wouldn't look at it, and I said, "What if I had a CAT scan?" They said, "Well, you'd have to have a CAT scan somewhere where we could author." I said, "Well, who do you use?" They said, "University of Texas in Austin." I said, "All right, good." That's what Jim did. He took it down. He charged them a ton of money, and the CAT scan, it was worthless. It was like they really didn't do anything. When I show you the ones that I got from Jesse Garant on my stuff, totally different. This was just like a big block of nothing. You could see nothing. And I understand it's very, very hard to get a good CAT scan. And Jesse Garant, they are much better apparently than the University of Texas, way better. And And they did all my CAT scans, 7 of them, for no charge, because they were very excited about the research. But then they met with resistance, just like everybody does. People don't like you doing this research when it upsets their apple cart. The people that did my DNA, I know he got assaulted, because he says, you make sure you tell people that I didn't take the sample out of the stone. You took a sample. And I said, okay, absolutely. And he said, I'll stand behind the test. What you sent me is exactly what's on the test. And it was human, and it was modern human, and it was dense, and it was the only way you could have done it, he said, basically, was to put a sample of your own blood or somebody's blood in there. What I did, I put the sample of the blood that came out of the stones. And this is so there's blood coming out of these all over the place. So let's take a look at what they did discover and why my stuff is superior to their stuff, because it's solid. You can really examine it. They just see a ball of gush. I'll show you. All right, this is just like finding something in your freezer you forgot about. I do that all the time. This is a horse. It was locked in a freezer up there in Alaska or Russia or somewhere. And they say it's 42,000 years old. How they got that, I don't know. Let's listen to what they have to say about how they did this and what they found. Here goes. Again, this is extinct
which
zoo.
showed that in life it had a bay-colored body and a black tail and mane. Sadly, it was deduced that the horse was only 2 weeks old at the time of its death, which seems to have been caused by getting trapped in mud, where it then drowned or died of thirst. Its exterior body condition no doubt shocked researchers. But what really made it a crazy discovery is what they found within: liquid blood. This was a huge deal, as liquid...
And it is. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But they're just, look at what they're dealing with. Look at what he just cut into. This is nothing more than a modern body. You can't make any details out of this. In the mud fossils, every single detail shows up. When I show you in a microscope, and again, I discovered interstitium. They didn't know that layer was there. It was never seen before until I found it in the mud fossils. You can't see these things when you're dealing with a ball of gush.
The discovery is what they found within: liquid blood. This was a huge deal, as liquid blood is extremely rare in permafrost animals, especially ancient ones. And this baby horse was particularly old, being dated to about 42,000 years.
Now look at what they're dealing with. That's just dealing with a ball of goo. My stuff, you see every single muscle and tendon and everything.
Ago. At this age, it also holds the record for having the oldest liquid blood ever, being the second place holder by 10,000 years.
No. We got them way older than that. Our stuff goes back to what they claim to be the Triassic.
Along with the pure statistical remarkableness of this achievement, many are excited with this discovery, as they think that its blood could be the answer in eventually cloning this animal and bringing it back to life.
That's where it's insanity. It's not here now. I don't know if that's a good thing to do. I don't know. Maybe it is good. Who knows?
Another discovery in the permafrost that dates back to around the same time and is equally as fascinating involves something that at first might seem unassuming: nematodes. These are microscopic, whitish to transparent, unsegmented worms that are among the Earth's most abundant creatures. All
right, they're going to go into some of the details of what they're finding in this mud, which don't really pertain. What I'm claiming is that there are much older creatures that were, well, actually, I don't know if they are older, but they were preserved in a different manner. Let's go with that. They were preserved in the warmer areas, and from the silicates and all that stuff collecting around probably the equatorial regions, where it was warm, and they turned into solid creatures when everything drained off. If you were in the right area, if you were way down in the muddy mud stuff where everything drained down as it dried out, well, I don't know exactly what would have happened there. But all of the stones I'm finding on top of the surface dried out as all of the mud ran off, and they turned into really excellent, superior quality specimens. All of the fascia, the pleura, the blood, and I'm going to take blood right out of here. We're going to get some blood out of here very shortly. And I'll show you how to do it in a microscope. You do it on your own, and then you can do the catalase test. You have to know what you're doing to do the catalase test and have it have any significance. But that's another thing. And then here we got Caesar. That's a goose. All right, there's his feathers. I show this. I've shown this stuff hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of times. And I'm going to keep showing it until it starts to be seen and looked into. Like these things. You know, it's 700,000 hits in a couple of weeks. I don't get, my whole channel doesn't get that in a year. All right, and these are more preserved than anything they're looking at. So anyway, and I have new species. We have new species. We have all kinds of things. You see the no-toes? Everybody's seen this stuff over and over and over. They're saying, "Oh, you keep saying the same thing. I can't imagine how you could possibly keep saying the same thing over and over." Well, nobody's listening. So if you don't like it, vayos con Dios, amigo. Okay, so geology and history and paleontology and all of that ologies is changing because, as I reported in 2015, these were exceptional preservation of soft-body creatures promoted by heavy, dense silica in their oceans worldwide, and they agree with it. This is Yale, and it was a worldwide soft-body creatures. Now, they take a whole different twist on this. They say this was prior to any fossils that they know about now. This was before there was any bone or well, hold on a second. Okay, a couple points on this one. This is Yale, Lydia Tarhan, and also Derek Briggs and a bunch of them from Yale claim they discovered all this stuff. And they're saying these creatures are outright bizarre, many of them. And listen to this. They say, is it some sort of failed evolutionary experiment, or do they include the ancestors of the animals that came afterwards and colonized the oceans? A big part of the answer involves figuring out how fossils were able to form. I figured it out. The animals themselves were entirely soft-bodied. Listen to this carefully. These are the details. If you miss this, you're missing everything. They say, and this is Yale, and they say they're exceptionally preserved, but they're soft-bodied creatures, and they didn't have any of the they were entirely soft-bodied. They lived before the evolution of shells or teeth or bones, which are typically the only parts of an organism to become fossilized. No, that's the only ones they look for because that's what they thought. This bone, as I will show you in the microscope, right there still has bone. All the rest has transitioned. There might be another little taste of bone here or there I could find, but it's not normal that you find actual bone still existing within these transitioned bones. And this bone was at one time like a regular white bone. And if it hadn't been in the conditions it was in, and it was like a modern time, it would have stayed white like this. But again, we're going to see this in a microscope. And I'm going to show you the giant skin from the fingertip, and you'll see that where the skin comes down to the tissue. Now, and they also said, which I mentioned to Yale, because I presented all this stuff to Yale a year before they wrote their paper. It's exactly identical to what I wrote and presented to them. It says it could happen and turn these things into stone in a matter of hours. Here's what they say. It enabled the transformation of loose sand around the animals. No, it was mud. To form into rock to occur over a matter of hours or years rather than the usual time frame, thousands to millions of years. They're trying to stay with their old stories. They don't work. And this is who I dealt with, is Derek Briggs. He's a big shot down there. And see here's what it is. It's all about funding. All right, Clark Fund, NASA grant. NASA is absolutely unbelievably, incredibly lost when it comes to biology. I've shown with the stuff that's on Mars. There's no question whatsoever. I've sent all the stuff to JPL and NASA and all these people. They don't want to know anything. They want to deal and give a lot of money to somebody like Yale who couldn't care less about the truth. I presented, like I say, all year before. Now, this is basically plagiarism as far as I'm concerned, because if you read my paper and read their paper, there's virtually no difference. And they're talking about this was before. They're saying this happened 540 million years ago, all of these mud fossils. But they're talking about, they just don't know what they're talking about. I just picked these up off the ground. I didn't dig really for anything. I had one little spot they dug for a small foundation, but it was only, I don't know, 3 feet deep or 4 feet, or whatever. It was just enough to get a good foundation in there. Dirt filled, I guess. And they moved that stuff down. I found a whole batch of stuff there. So I think it's time to stop funding these people. This is just a waste of time, and it's all about money. And right now, I think they should fund me to create a school. They have really, literally taken my research and claimed it as their own. That's fiduciary. Well, the fiduciary failure is another deal we're going to be talking about, because their obligation is to the student, not to themselves. And the students are being denied reality. They may be talking about this stuff now down there, I don't know. But I can tell you what, I haven't had one academic yet that will discuss my mud fossils, which are the same as what they're talking about, only they can only talk about them because they're at Yale. And then they say, oh, it's just something that happened and it's no big thing. It was just, I don't know what they're thinking. I really don't. I have no idea. But they're saying it happened 540 million years ago. Why would it be sitting on the top of the surface of the Earth? I am in the Triassic region of the world in Connecticut, USA, right down the street from Yale. And they have dinosaur footprints. And on the other side of me is Dinosaur State Park, who I used to know all the people there. And when I presented this stuff, talked to them about it, they laughed at me. So it's because they are so indoctrinated to believe people like Yale, who, it's my opinion, I'm seeing plagiarism there. They took my paper, all my work, and claimed it as their own, and which is fraud. And I think probably $150 million, we could start a good school, something that would be true and real. And I'll even let Yale put their name on it if they want. But we've got to start teaching the truth. I know it's a hard thing for them to accept. Very hard. Extremely hard. But they have accepted it. Exceptional preservation of soft-bodied creatures. This is Edicarta biota, means a regional layer, which is worldwide everywhere. And they said it was all oceans, basically all around the world, which it was. It was a great worldwide flood. And it was promoted by silica-rich oceans. Silica is a very heavy fluid when it turns into silica fluids, and it surrounds an area deep in the ocean. And when we almost got hit by Venus, all the oceans boiled up and bubbled up, and all of that silica came to the surface. And they claim we would never know anything about it if it wasn't for the silica. And I see right here, it was due to rapid precipitation of silica cements. They didn't precipitate, they came up from below. And it facilitated high silica saturation, which is the biomineralizer, which turns them all into biological minerals. This is exactly what they say, exactly what I explained to them. There's no difference whatsoever. And you can look at my paper, it's on academia.edu. It's called Fascia Facilitated Fossilizations from 2015, a year prior to them doing their work. I would like to hear from somebody, any top university, even Yale. Are they teaching them this? Are they teaching them about these creatures that were preserved long ago, as they say? And I say, no. Are they talking to him about Velikovsky and his research that he did, real research? He was a very close friend of Einstein. And he went to everywhere around the world and collected the information of the stories of those cultures. All the myths, all of the, from South America and Europe and all of the Asian places and all of these far-flung outposts that nobody had contact with back and forth in those days. And they all had the same story. A little bit twist here, twist there, but basically the same thing, a worldwide cataclysm and a worldwide flood. And it killed all kinds of giant creatures that had been from some, like they said, like Yale says, some evolutionary experiment. It didn't go well. And God said, this is over. These guys are just out of control. And they were wiped out. And Yale agrees with this. They said, could it be an evolutionary experiment gone wrong? And yes, it is. Now, are they teaching any of this to the kids? Who in academia, who in college, and history, and geology is learning about this? That's what I want to know. Please leave me comments. If you're in school, or you know anybody that's in school, ask them, are they being taught this? Because Yale stands behind this. Just exactly what I showed you. And the problem is, I was pretty well shut down because, you know, they couldn't get any money out of me, I guess, was the reason. That's the only reason I can think of. Because they took my research and then got funded by NASA, which we pay for that. So they're basically working for us because we're funding them. They should be doing a better job for us. Now, let's get started with the microscope and look at the stuff. Because don't forget, what they're finding up in Alaska or Russia, they're just finding dead meat that's been preserved in real well. When they thaw it out, it's just nothing more than something they could buy down at or roadkill, or whatever you want to call it. Now, my stuff, we can look at it and you will see, this is spectacular stuff. And everybody that's seen it knows it's spectacular stuff. The people that haven't seen it are the people that have already made up their mind, like Derek Briggs and all these other people. He kept telling me, oh, these are all rocks. These are just rocks. And this went on for years. And finally, I wrote my book, being very upset. And here it is right here. Mines in Collision. This came out a year before Yale wrote their paper. And I was upset. And I'm still kind of upset. You know, this goes back to 2015. So that's 8 years ago. I have a reason to be upset. And you should be upset too. Because we're being denied truth because of academia. They just don't want this stuff known. It just upsets everything that they're saying. You have to say to become educated. If you don't say what we tell you from their Ivy League walls, then you're not qualified to be intelligent. You just have to repeat, and you're good to go. And even quantum physics, if you go to Yale's site on YouTube and look up quantum physics, Professor Shankar, I went through that course a little bit, enough to find out it was ridiculous. The first thing he comes out and says, nobody knows anything about quantum physics, you just tell me what I tell you and you'll be good to go. I'm not kidding you. In 1 minute, he tells all the kids, he says, I'm the only one that doesn't know about quantum physics. In 1 week, none of you will know about quantum physics. Even the guy that writes Feynman, who is the quantum physics guy, he doesn't know about him, so don't worry about it. You just say what I say, and everybody will think you're a genius. I'm not kidding you. You see here, this is Yale Quantum Physics. Look, it's got all kinds of courses, and they go for a very long time. That's Professor Shankar. Now let's see what he has to say right off the bat. All right, he comes out. Listen.
So this is a very exciting day for me, because today we're going to start quantum mechanics, and that's all we'll do till the end of the term. Now, I got bad news and good news. The bad news is that it's a subject that's kind of hard to follow intuitively, and the good news is that nobody can follow it intuitively. Richard Feynman, one of the big figures in physics, used to say no one understands quantum mechanics. So in some sense the pressure is off for you guys, because I don't get it and you don't get it and Feynman doesn't get it. The point is, here's my goal. Right now I am the only one who doesn't understand quantum mechanics. In about 7 days, all of you will be unable to understand quantum mechanics. Then you can go back and spread your ignorance everywhere else. That's the only legacy a teacher can want. So
Well, what am I going to say about that? Here's Yale, business as usual. I couldn't help myself. It was off track, but I have electron flood theory, dipole electron flood theory, and it says a proton is not one big ball like that. A proton is 1,823 dipoles. That's why they can't figure anything out. Just like you said, nobody gets it. They don't understand because it can't be understood because it's just not right. So, and the same thing with the history and the biology and everything. It's all just nonsense. I'm not kidding you. 100% of the theoretical sciences right now are nonsense. When they talk about the speed of light not being able to speed up or slow down, ridiculous. The vacuum of space is not a vacuum. They know this, but they just overlook it. They just go around it and say, oh, well, everything's fine. And the lights, everything's expanded because it's all being pulled away from us because of a Big Bang. Hell no. Light is slowing down as it comes to us. And it slows down so much, it's red-shifted, yes. And some of it gets so slowed down, it just doesn't move anymore. And it becomes the cosmic microwave background, where it just gets hit every now and then by light coming through, and it pops, pop, 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 pop. They call that the quantum foam. Look that up, Fermilab quantum foam. A dizzying display of subatomic particles winking in and out of existence. Yes, because they're just laying around out there. Light slows down until it comes to a dead stop. And this, I can show all these stuff with my light experiments. And another thing, I'm not allowed to present any of this. Fermilab told me to stay away from them. I'm a tinfoil hat guy. And I found their particles. So this is systemic in everything that their science is done when they have their position and their status. No more discussion. And that's what I have found. All right. So you know what a scab is. When you get a cut, you get a scab. Well, guess what? Plasma, that your blood, is 91 to 92% water. It's just water. And that's what evaporates. And then the scab is 8 to 9% solids. It mainly comprises of coagulants, mainly fibrogen. That's the clotting fabric that I showed you, that white stuff. And the plasma proteins, such as albumin, globulin, that help maintain the colloidal pressure. However, there's much more to blood than that. Whole blood, they're talking about there's 4 blood components. There's red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and plasma. That we're just talking about the plasma. They're used to treat, anyway, they don't care about that. What is in blood? What is in actual blood? Here it is right here. All of those metals are in your blood. All of those metals, you see that? 26 elements quantified in whole blood and in plasma. These are all the different elements. That's the stuff that forms the scab. Now, they just went up on on asteroid Bennu, and picked up a sample on there, and it brought back to Earth. And I guarantee you it's going to have all of this stuff in it because it is a heart. And they went right down to a heart valve. And they went and they thought they were going to grab sort of a solidish sample. And when they did, it's just all particulates, because that's what happens to blood when it dries out. It turns into like grainy little particles. And they went zoop, and they grabbed a sample and they took off with it in this very secure little capsule. But they didn't realize that they had a whole bunch of stuff extra came back with it. And if they look at it, I can guarantee you right now, I will stake any amount of money to anybody that this is what they're going to find. And not maybe in this exact ratios, but they're going to have almost all of those components in there, which is nothing more than what is in your blood. And these are transition metals that carry things and drop them off and pick things up. That's what transitions metals do. They're in this, primarily in this range. The metals, other metals, and transition metals. And they drag things from this side over to this side, and from that side over to this side, as they move down through your body. And they also work, well, there's a lot to that. But let's get back to wherever we were before. All right, it couldn't be more obvious than this. These are all the metals that are in your blood. Your heart is just nothing more than a pump that pumps blood. And this is what the heart is here. And it's just saturated with blood. There's bags of blood that's saturated with blood because the muscle that runs your heart, it requires a ton of blood. So it's literally a big solid chunk of blood with some valves in it and some plumbing. Well, let's take a look at what they're looking at out here on Bennu. It's the exact same thing. And this right here is where the tendon holds in, and this is the slurpy stuff around the tendon that holds the plumbing coming out of the valves. Now, this is almost solid metals, basically. It's all, I showed you 92% is water. It's going to evaporate out of here mostly, especially on the surface. You're going to get almost no water left on the surface. What they did was they landed a lander in there and went bam, and they grabbed some stuff and they took right back off. And they grabbed, I don't know, a pound or so or whatever, a small amount. And it's into this secure capsule. But when they left, a bunch of the particulates got caught inside something. And when they got back here on Earth, I had already made my prediction that what they were going to find was blood, those metals, the same metals I'm talking about, because that is the valve of a heart. This, you see this here? Look. You see that? That's not a crater. That's a tube that's coming out of the heart. The heart has tubes all over. You see the black and the red right next to each other? That's vein and artery. You see black and red, vein and artery. You see this right up here? This right here is tendon. You see these little stripes in there? That locks this in here, which holds the muscle so that the thing can do this. I have looked at this extremely well, and there's another one down here. You see this one down here? That's a tube coming out. That's not a crater going in, and that tubing is right between the red and the black. There's all kinds of plumbing going on in your body. In your heart. I mean, in the heart, it's just unbelievable. Let me show you anatomical of the heart. But don't forget, this is Bennu, and they just brought back, this is my claim, and again, I'll bet anybody, they're going to find almost exactly the same thing as blood metals. And here, remember, this is Psyche. This one here must have got cooked somehow and really closely irradiated, and it really sort of cooked off the surface and almost turned into what you would think of it would be a meteorite. It looks to me like it boiled it off pretty good. And we're still, see, this is the bloody area. There's still the bloody area. This is blood right here. It's just turned into dust now because it's been extremely irradiated. Now, I don't know how that happened. You see, Bennu wasn't like this. It's identical, same heart. I mean, there's no difference whatsoever. None. Zero. You see the two of them back to back? And the same as this. This is what it is. They're hearts. And these two are complete. This one here, they think they're going to be able to mine it for all kinds of metals, which they can, because the metals are in the blood, which I just showed you. What's in the blood is saturated with metals, is basically all. And everything else pretty much evaporated out, especially on the surface areas. I don't know how deep that would happen, because I know even the stuff we have, even rocks. You see this? That rock, I think I showed you this, maybe I didn't. This is just a rock, but it was a heart. And this is what I believe the aorta, where you have the really red blood, although I'm not sure of that. All I can tell you is just these different valves. And this one, this one, this one. This one was the one that is the blue one, which is like a vein valve, you see? That's why it's yellow looking. It's a different blood. It's either the lymph or it's a vein return, pretty much of lymph, I think. And these other ones are the red blood. And after he had that cracked open, he went out and looked, and he took 15-minute challenge. And I'm not kidding you, that's the honest truth. I would put out a challenge to anybody to take 15 minutes to go out and just pick up a stone, pick up some stones, and see if you can find any sign of life. He saw this red spot. He comes up and hits it with a hammer, and it just splits right there, because that's right where the plumbing attaches to the heart. And he's got red blood, and this is not quite red, and this one here is completely not red. That's exactly what happens in your heart. So he leaves it out for an hour or so, 2 hours, I guess. I can't remember how long it was. And here's what happened. It oxygenated. and turn, or deoxygenated. I guess it deoxygenated because it was red before. So when the red leaves and turns black, it means you use the oxygen. And these are all the different tubes inside the heart. And it's just a rock. But it was a heart of I don't know what, but it was a heart. You see this? This is what the heart looks like. And the guy's name was Phil Harris. Unfortunately, Phil passed away. But he took the 15-minute challenge, and when he tapped it, it split right on this. This is almost like it's bolted on with all this plumbing. And these tubes sticking out all over the place, as I showed you on Bennu. Now, let me show you something else. You see this? That's what the aorta and so forth, the plumbing right here, when he snapped it, it broke right across in this area. And you can see up on Bennu, this is the tendon that locks the muscle in. So think of, here's what you got. You got literally 2 bags of blood here. One of them is the artery, that is your good stuff that you push down into your muscles and so forth. And the other one is coming back to get filtered through the liver and all the stuff that takes out all the bad stuff. And then it ends up going through the lungs, and then it gets pumped back down through the body. So it's a continuous cycle of good blood being infused with oxygen and all the nutrients and all of the secreted enzymes and everything else, and then pushing that through your body. And then when it gets used, at the very end, they call it capillaries, tiny, tiny, tiny little things. They bring it over to the vein side and lymph, and it comes back up to get all fixed back up. And it's just a continuous cycle. However, it's got a beat. Boom, 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 boom. Well, it almost like twists. And when it does, it goes loop, 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 that type of thing. But it has to be locked in. This is red, soft, smooth muscle, basically, cardiac muscle. But you don't see, there's none of this white stuff. Well, what's the white stuff all about? That's tendon. And so what? What's tendon? Tendon locks down solidly so that whatever is attached to it, the muscle can pull against it, and the tendon gives it a little bit of give, not much. The muscle does all kinds of stuff. I mean, they can really move. The tendon can just do just about that. That's why it's white. It doesn't need blood. Here, you need a ton of blood, and you need it continuously 24 hours a day. If you start running, this thing here sucks blood up like unbelievable. The nutrients out of the blood, it's doing a lot of work. So this is what we're going to see on Bennu. I'm going to show you again. Remember this here, and remember this slurpy looking stuff, and then the valves. All right, so let's look at Bennu. Don't forget, these little tendon fibers lock in. All right, so here we go back to Bennu, and here's the fibers, and you can almost see them. Well, actually, you can see them. Can you see those? I think you can. I can see them. You see them? They're locking that thing in, just like I showed you. It locks in, and then wrapped around it is all the muscle that does the galuk, and then the blood goes back and forth through these valves. And these are the different colors of blood. This is a no-brainer. A no-brainer at all. And again, this is not. That's not. Whoops. Hold on. Let me back this up. You see that right there? That's not a crater. That's a piece of tubing. In the center is where the blood was. And all of these things, a lot of these are actual, not craters, are actually something else. Now, I'm not saying they're not, none of them are craters. Some of them are, obviously, I would say. But the things they're taking for craters, like this and this right here, these 2 heart valves, that's ridiculous. Especially when you see psyche. It's the same thing. And because it's all metal, that's what's in the blood, is the metals. And the moisture evaporates. Yes, absolutely no question whatsoever. And when you rehydrate it, it turns back into blood. And I'm going to rehydrate some here right now, and you'll see it turns right back into blood almost immediately. It's just stunning. You know, this is going longer than I thought, but what I am going to do is I got the microscope going. I'm going to do this in 2 parts. And I'm going to show you the CAT scans of all of the different body parts we had CAT scanned, and I'm going to show you the DNA test. I think might have already shown you that. And we're going to see the distal phalanges bone black pattern, which in the vein and the artery, and how the blood supplies down here into those. And we're going to look at this in very, very deep, and I like getting into the microscope. But what we're going to find is all of these metals. These are the 26 elements in whole blood and in plasma. And as I showed you, the plasma is 92% water, something like that. So you end up, the rest of it is these things. And this is what we're going to be seeing, and we'll be looking at them in a microscope. And we'll find some blood vessels and all that stuff in my giant mud fossil specimens under the microscope. You see what you think. Okay, so back to this permafrost area. They found this, whatever it is, with the skin and even intact horns still attached to its skull. Now, these were pretty much about the size of the creatures we have today, maybe a little bigger, same size, whatever. But on the earth was living normal-sized people, just like in cattle and everything else, it appears. And then there were giants. And that's all I can tell you. And it says there was giants in the earth in those days, and after that there was more giants when the daughters of man went, gods went into daughters of man. And then they had giants. And they did. There was giants. I show it over and over. Now listen to this. This is how these guys are. All they're interested is having a little party and having a little club, and they all say the same thing, do the same things. Listen to this.
Its state was so excellent that upon its discovery, it was deduced that it could actually be eaten. And in true human fashion, that's exactly what researchers did. Specifically, a paleontologist decided to cut off a portion of its neck, which was then used in a stew at a dinner party. Partygoers described its aroma as being beef-like, mixed with earth and mushrooms, while describing the taste as not terrible, but more unpleasant than beef jerky. And yet, surprisingly, no one got sick.
You know, I've been working with all these mud fossils and the blood in them and everything, and I mean, I'm telling you, the blood comes right out of them. And we're eating the blood that was in all of these rocks. That's what things live on, is the blood. Plants thrive on the blood that is in the rocks. That's why I've shown this over and over and over. Green things, moss specifically, loves red blood. Absolutely. You see a rock covered with moss in that area. If you dig around, you'll see the source of the moss, and you'll find it's coming out of an artery. You look around for that. You'll see moss-covered rocks. And sometimes you'll see just one spot has moss in it. Well, hold on a second. You might have a hard time seeing this, maybe not. You see that moss right there? You see that moss? You see that moss right there? Those are where the arteries were for this foot. This is a no-toe. And those were where the arteries were for this foot. And there's another no-toe here. Now there's no... Once they get, sometimes the stuff grows in there and it just keeps, I don't put any water on this thing. And this thing, again, died flat in the flood. It's a no-toe. And you see how the toes come across sideways like this? This has always confused me. And this looks like it might even have like toenails down in there somewhere. But they come across because there's tendons that run sideways. They don't run straight out in the foot. The tendons are what gives it that, that lays over the top of the bones and all that stuff. The bones apparently come out straight, but the tendons run sideways. Very interesting. So that's why, like I say, look around for the moss-covered rocks. Those will be where there's blood growing behind that, almost exclusively. All right, stay with me on this. This is running a lot longer than I thought. I'm going to do part 2, which will be all the microscope shots and the blood and how to extract the blood and all that. But everybody's starting to talk now. And this happened the last time too that I got real aggressive, and they started looking for giants. Everybody was looking to asking questions about the giants, and then that only went on for a couple of weeks because it got shut down because of academia. But there's an article about it somewhere. Yeah, here it is right here. I wrote my book in 2015. It came out in January 2016. In February of 2016, these articles started coming out all over the place about how tall were giants in the Bible. Now listen to this. They state it right here. It says, it is interesting how from time to time certain subjects pop up with unusual frequency. Over the past couple of weeks, I have talked to multiple people who were curious about the height of the giants in the Bible. And they say there's a great deal of information circulating on the internet about these giants, along with various theories connecting them. Now they throw in demons and aliens and various types of governmental, scientific conspiracies. And this is what they tried to destroy me with all this. And then they said, if you believe in this stuff, you're an insane person. And basically, that's how I got destroyed. And this was exactly after I put my book out. Interestingly, time to time, certain subjects pop up unusual frequency. It was all over the place for a couple of weeks. I was just slaughtered with stuff, and then, then it was nothing but attacks because they ganged up like a mob, and it was just. It was a hard thing to take because everybody that I knew was thinking I was insane, and most of them still do. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's hard to change people's minds. It's easier to fool them than it is to have them accept the truth, and that's what's going on right now. Okay, like I say, we're going to do it a second one. I'll do everything, and we'll finish it up on the second round. But this is just out today, or very shortly ago. Stone Age pioneers, Homo erectus, high altitude life 2 million years ago. Well, there was floods all over, so they had to go up to try to survive. And this is in Ethiopia, so they're finding all of this ancient stuff about Homo erectus inhabited the high altitude highlands. There was no low altitude. The low altitude was underwater. And this is the stuff we're going to be talking about. So stay tuned, part 2 coming up. I love you all. And I may even have it up today. I'm just going to continue on, but I don't want to take everybody's time up. It's taking a very long time. So, and if you're not interested in the other stuff, that's fine. But at least we should start to realize what our true past is. That's all I'm trying to do. All right, thank you.